What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Part of the Problem. I am Dave Smith, and we are thrilled to be joined, as we always are, by the great Scott Horton. It's just hard. It's hard for me to overstate how just important a figure Scott has been to like our entire the whole libertarian non-interventionist movement. I don't know where we would be without this guy, who of course wrote the best book on the terror wars called Enough Already, and the best book on the war in Ukraine called Provoked. Also if you want to really understand American foreign policy, there's no better resource. Go, the Scott Horton Show has over 6,000 interviews. They're all up for free. You can check out all of them. I from time to time do go back and listen to some of the old ones, particularly the Pat Buchanan and the Ron Paul interviews were always just so good. And it's really so interesting how literally just, I think a couple weeks ago, I was listening to one of the Pat Buchanan ones, and it's in 2011 or whatever. And you're talking about the latest thing, but so much of the conversation is like completely relevant to today still. And it's still so interesting. And then of course, you're talking about the conflict and you're kind of seeing, oh yeah, this is how it all played out since then. And anyway, I highly recommend checking that out. And of course, I just want to make sure before we get started, to plug a couple other things, because I'm not sure, I can't remember if last time we were on the show, we promoted that you and Daryl Cooper are now doing your own podcast together, also called Provoked. We did. I think we did mention it. But now it's out and there's several episodes and it's just really fun in its groove. It's such a great show. And then, of course, you have the Academy. I don't know if that is up and running yet, or is that to be out soon?
Almost. First of all, thanks, man. And yeah, it's the Scott Horton Academy of Foreign Policy and Freedom. It's my own little Liberty classroom. Tom Wood set up for me here. And so it's me doing 2 big courses on the Middle East and the new Cold War with Russia. And then I got great James Bovard on 40 years of investigative journalism on all kinds of things. Ramsey Baroud on Israel-Palestine. Bill Bupert on how America lost every war since 1945. C.J. Kilmer on how Woodrow Wilson is the worst person who ever lived. And we're talking like 8-hour courses on Woodrow Wilson, 8-hour courses on all these things, or longer, better. Mine are much longer. And then Tom Woods has brought on a new guy. I forgot the guy's name, but I don't know much about it yet, but it's going to be about the history of Christianity and sort of the newfangled invention of premillennialist dispensationalism, the Darbyite, Christian Zionism invented in the late 19th century there. And so we're going to learn a hell of a lot about that too. And so if people go to scotthortonacademy.com and you watch a cool little video that Dan Smott's made to get you excited, and then put your email address in there and you'll be the first to know. And I really hope that we're going to have the first courses will go up this month.
Yeah, I was really excited about this when you first told me you were doing it, because it's just like for a few reasons. It's a great tool to, like, for people who love your stuff and watch, say, like they always love when you're on my podcast or Tom's podcast or whatever, or they know you from Tucker, they know you from Lex or whatever it might be. It's just like you're like, hey, you want to do the deep dive now and really learn your shit. This is like, you have this tool. And then particularly, I just think for the younger people out there who are maybe like in our broader world and maybe aspiring to be people themselves who host shows or do other things or something, it's like, oh dude, this is the perfect like boot camp for our team of like, dude, just get through this shit and you'll really know your shit like on a next level. You could listen to one Scott Horton podcast and probably be above 90% of the general public, but this is like where you could really know what you're talking about, which is important, especially now. Me and you, Scott, it's kind of interesting, we're like on this professional journey together in a lot of ways, and me and you have been good friends now for a long time, and we're both much bigger than we ever were before, just more followers and more people listening, and we're doing shows with bigger and bigger audiences. And it's just, you kind of, I was thinking about this earlier today, that, it really is, you go back a bit further in this libertarian business than me by, I guess, about 10 years further. You were like in the mid 90s and I was like in the mid 2000s. But it is kind of crazy that we're just in this position now. And I guess me and you kind of, rising a little bit and how known we are as part of it too, that you take a step back and you do look now and you're like, wow, there is a really large coalition of non-interventionist right-winger types in the country today. It's really unlike anything that we've ever seen before. Like this, our stuff is winning, at least the minds, certainly not any of the minds in power, but our arguments are kind of winning and having their day and being heard more than ever before. I mean, the more I've been listening to Tucker Carlson just had a bunch of great podcasts in a row where it's between you and then having Daryl back on, and he had Sagar and Jetty on, who was great, and then he had John Mearsheimer on, who was great, and you're just listening to them, and they're like, dude, there's no distance between us almost at this point. I'm sure we could find some finer points, but they're so with us. And anyway, so I guess I'm rambling all of this to go. I know you just recorded, how long was your podcast with Lex Friedman the other day? And it's just kind of cool that it seems like these ideas are starting to really take hold like we've never seen before.
Yeah. Well, it was 10 hours. In fact, I got up today and started looking at my email, and some neuron went off and said, oh, you know what? You never answered his question about the Iran war. Because I said, wait, hold that thought. We got to talk about Somalia. And then from there, we did the Cold War stuff. And we never went back to the Iran war. So you saw, hell, well, what do you want to do, man? I mean, we did have the debate with Dubowitz there that we already talked about a lot of that. But I guess we could record a little more. I said, all right, I'm on my way over there, man. I'll see you in a little while. So I went and we recorded another 40 minutes today that we're going to punch into the middle of the interview.
Jeez, wow.
Almost 11. But so we did all of enough already, essentially, and every tangent in the world. Like with Tucker, it was like, okay, I got 3 hours max here. I already knew I was pushing it there. I got to stay on track. Lex Friedman was like, no track. Let's take every tangent, dude. Let's go on whatever we want to talk about, dude. Who's Jalaluddin Haqqani? Let's just whatever. That's a bad example. That wasn't one. But let's just take no time limit, right? The YouTube time limit is 12 hours. Let's just, and I told him, hey, I'm down for whatever, man. I'll talk about whatever. So we just went all the way through it and took every tangent and went down every cul-de-sac and then came back again. And it was cool. It was like, oh man, it's almost 1 a.m, probably about quitting time. And so, yeah, it's longest interview probably either of us have ever done on either end, there.
All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show. Is a brand new sponsor, and we're very happy to have them on board, and that is the Wellness Company. Does your immune system feel compromised ever since COVID? A new study published in the Journal of Clinical Laboratory Analysis suggests you may not be in the clear even if you feel fine. Researchers analyzed blood from people who had recovered from COVID and found something concerning. Their platelets, which are essential for healthy blood clotting, were not functioning properly even months after recovery. Other studies had found lingering spike proteins in the bloodstream and organs, causing immune system dysfunction and even mitochondrial damage, whether from the virus or the mRNA shots. This is why Dr. Peter McCullough, the hero through COVID, developed Ultimate Spike Detox, the doctor-formulated blend including nattokinase to help break down spike protein, bromelain to support immune health, and turmeric with black pepper to reduce inflammation and repair cells. Take back control of your health today. Visit twc.health/problem and use the promo code problem for 10% off plus free shipping. That's twc.health/problem, promo code problem for 10% off and free shipping. All right, let's get back into the show. Oh, I saw he tweeted it's his longest one yet, and he's known for having real long form shows. He's even compared, Rogan almost never does 5-6 hour shows. He's done a few of those before. And this was, but never a 10-hour one or 10 hours and 40 minutes. Longer.
We're really running out of time. We gave relatively short shrift to the Cold War with Russia. We didn't really do Bush, Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump, all the way through the way I might have liked to. So but I did say at the end of that, I was like, all right, if anybody listened to all 10 hours of this, you probably want to sign up for the Scott Horton Academy. If I was able to keep your attention this long, then yeah. And I'm not sure how people are going to react to it. They're either going to, on Twitter, people are just LMAO or whatever. But I don't know if they're gonna think, well, this guy is just a blowhard who likes hearing himself talk, and that's why it's so long. Or if they're gonna be like, wow, Lex is interested, and I'm interested as long as he is. And I mean, we are talking about substantive stuff most of the time. He asked me about myself a little bit in the middle, but mostly we're just talking about the things. And so
Yeah.
I don't know. The book's long too, but people are reading it cover to cover and having a
Yeah.
good time with it. You know what I mean? I'm getting those. Like, man, I didn't think I could do it, but I actually knocked this thing out in a week. No problem. So
Yeah, dude. I mean, I think, one of the things, the reason why I kind of brought the 2 points up that I did leading into it is that it did just feel to me like there's, I don't know. I'm just, again, there's some polling data that really backs this up too, but I have kind of, I know this is a somewhat anti-scientific sounding thing to say, but I have kind of found over the last few years that just like what I observe in the country and the trends is a better, like predictor than these polls even are at times. Like it was so easy to see in 2024 that like Trump is leading big, even though all the polls were saying, oh, it's like dead even. You're like, no, it's not. I don't know. I don't. And then we find out that the private Biden campaign polls had him like losing like every electoral vote, but it's, I've been talking about this a lot on the show, like going to the Charlie Kirk event when I went to Turning Point USA, and I'm going so hard against Israel and against Trump, and like a huge faction of the crowd is completely on my side. Like not like a super majority, but certainly like twice as many people are cheering as are booing, and this is at Charlie Kirk's event. You know what I'm saying? Like this is not at Ron Paul's event. And then you see like all of these things, like, you see Piers Morgan, how he went from being like an Israel supporter to like the most hardcore critic now, just exposing them every day.
He had me on last week too. He let me debate Wesley Clark for the 3rd time.
Yeah, it was great. It was really that was actually very good. But so there's just like there's a thing where now you have this show with Piers Morgan. It's like getting like huge numbers on YouTube, and every day it seems like now it's the Zionists are getting shredded show. And then it's like even and I guess the thing with Lex, it just and I really am not, I'm not saying this to criticize Lex the same way I'm not saying it to criticize Piers Morgan. I'm just saying that like the way it went down, where like you get on the show and have this contentious debate where Lex kind of seems to be look, I want to be as charitable as I can here, but kind of seems to be putting his finger on the scales a little bit and not in your favor. And then you were a little not happy about the way. And like the response is like to immediately have you back and now do this crazy long episode. And I just see a lot of these things. Like all I'm saying is that it just seems like, dude, the people have shifted so much on this issue that now everybody's kind of got to deal with this new market demand of like, no, you don't get to just like shut down the anti-war voices. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think we have better arguments and we've been winning the arguments. I think also just what's happening is so horrible, but also it's just like, I don't know, the Warhawks have been wrong about everything for 25 years. And like, blatantly for 25 years, and they were wrong before that many times. But like there's, and it's funny, even like with the Iran thing, they try to jump on us. Oh, you guys were alarmists. See, it wasn't that big of a deal. But it'll be people who are like, dude, you're sitting on 25 years of being catastrophically wrong about everything, and I don't know, it just feels like there's a major shift going on.
Right. Look, Doug McGregor says time wins more arguments than reason. And so the fact of the matter is that, like, who could deny you should have all been antiwar.com this whole time, dude? What could you say? You know what I mean? And like even on the Iran thing, people talk real big, but most of them don't know the first thing about it. And if you zoom in on the situation, you see that it's entirely unresolved. And just as we always said, you shouldn't bomb them because now they're more likely to make a nuke, and you're not going to be able to certainly prevent that without a regime change. And you're not going to be able to do a regime change without escalating the war far beyond what anyone is willing to do. In other words, sending in the 82nd Airborne and the 3rd Infantry Division and taking the country over. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody's considering doing that. Well, but you can't have a regime change from the air, and you can't make the Ayatollah give up enrichment just by threatening him and bombing him. So he's still saying, I'm still going to enrich. So now that Trump has bought Israel's definition of a nuclear program is a nuclear weapons program, and we have to prevent it from existing at all. That means that we're just at halftime right now. The war's not over at all. The entire issue is unresolved. It could have been unresolved at the table, but Donald Trump let Israel drag us into war. People say it was the 12-day war. Well, it's like somebody asked somebody about like, hey, so was the French Revolution good or bad for world history? And he's like, well, we'll see. One day we'll know for sure. You know what I mean? Like, you got to have a little bit of a longer time horizon to examine these things on. That was just, a month and a half ago. We don't know what the results are going to be yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And you would think, particularly in, fairly recent memory, maybe not anymore because things move so fast, but like, it's like, I don't know, you guys were spiking the football on Mission Accomplished. You were spiking the football on Gaddafi after he died. You were spiking the football on how strong the Afghan army that we were building was. It's like after a while, you're like, yeah, I don't know if you quite yet get to say, look, perfect, this ended really good. And all that seems to, at least so far, all that seems to have happened to me in the 12-day war is that some Iranians got killed, some Israelis got killed. Absolutely nothing was accomplished. And there was no threat to begin with. It was all done on false pretenses anyway. So like, even if it does just end at that, like I don't know. It's just so like, it's such a weird even mind state to just be like, well, if it doesn't end in a catastrophe where hundreds of thousands of people die, then hey, that's a win. Like what?
And best interpretation here is that they set the program back a bit. But
yeah.
And they swear, and I'm not taking their word for it. They swear they're still not breaking out for a nuke, and that the old rules still apply. But they also say they're never going to end enrichment, as you pointed out many times. Well, we're all just lucky that the Ayatollah fired only 14 missiles and called ahead of time and warned us to please shoot them down, and essentially deliberately missed, firing at the corner of a base in Qatar kind of thing, as a symbolic retaliation only, when didn't have to be that way. At a certain point in desperation, they very well could start launching thousands of missiles at our bases over there. And what are all the pro-Israel hawks going to say then? Oh, yeah. See, that's why we had to do this, is because that's the kind of danger they always represented, after we start losing a bunch of sailors and airmen over there in Bahrain and Qatar. So, that situation.
Well, you could, look.
Resolved.
Well, and also, and one of the things that I thought was really interesting, even in this little 12-day war, even just saying it was just a 12-day war, it was amazing how quickly, like, the narrative and the justification would change, like, day to day to day, like, literally, like, even leading up to it, it was like one day Trump was like, we can negotiate on enrichment levels. And then all the hawks freaked out about it. And then he posts like, there can be no enrichment, and then you're like, oh, what? So we're not going to do a deal. Then he's like, we're still negotiating and blah, blah, blah. Then Israel attacks. Then he says we were in on the, then all the war hawks one day were going, literally one day, 24 hours before they weren't. They were going, oh, no one's dragging America into war. Israel can handle its business on its own. We just want America to get out of the way and let Israel do it. And then after the Israeli strikes, all the hawks were out on their shows and on social media saying, Israel has just completely obliterated Iran's nuclear program. And then 24 hours later, it was like, well, yeah, we only need a few bunker busters. I mean, like, that's it. You know what I mean? And you just know, like, it'd be so easy for them, as you were just describing, to just change one more time, and then the next day just be like, oh, yeah, regime change,
And they were kind of going for it. I mean, the Washington Post had that story where the Israelis sent those messages to all those military officials there, tell them, we're going to kill your families if you don't turn on the regime right now and overthrow it, which didn't work. And they were tweeting out pictures of, I think it was the defense minister or maybe deputy defense minister or something, palling around with the son of the Shah. Like they're going to parachute the monarch back in there and he's just going to cast a magic spell over these people. Where I think probably what's more likely is what Mearsheimer told Tucker is they want to wreck Iran. Like I says to that Israel lobby girl on the Piers Morgan show before, she goes, oh, well, they'll just fix it. The new Iran will be great or whatever. No, the new Iran will be probably well armed by foreigners, a giant faction fight with Azeris and Kurds and Sunni Arabs and Shiite Persians and Baluchi bin Ladenite suicide bombers and God knows what over there, dude. Which is I'm sure, what Israel prefers. Remember, I think we've talked about this before, although I'm sure it's been a while. It's the Oded Yanon plan. I was explaining this to Lex Friedman.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is before the clean break. This is an earlier version of the same sort of thing. And it's from 1982. And Oded Yanon was an advisor to Ariel Sharon. And he wrote this thing where the whole, it's funny because it's a hysterical screed. Like if you read it, you're like, holy crap, this guy's freaking out. And it's like the premise of the whole thing is that it's obvious that Soviet communism is going to conquer the entire planet like any day now. And Israel's going to be all alone out there, right? This is just a handful of years before the Soviet Union ceases to exist entirely. But Soviet communism is going to rule the entire world. Poor little Israel is going to be all alone, surrounded by these enemy Arab states. And so they only really have one choice, which is to smash them into as many small pieces as they can, as many warring tribal factions. So that basically, instead of having just have an angry Arab with an AK-47 over his head is basically the biggest threat that they'll confront.
I apologize. Let me just interject for a second. Just I want you to get to this because this is really fascinating stuff. But there's just for like, again, because we got like younger people who listen to the show, just like, so if people don't know, before the collapse of the Soviet Union during the Cold War, that was what Israel used as their justification to the West for why you had to support them. Like this was the entire argument. And in fact, the same way that you see now where people go, like Tucker Carlson is funded by Qatar, or, like try to make connection. The whole, and you can watch young interviews of Benjamin Netanyahu. I think he was going by his real name back then, where he's talking about how the PLO is just a proxy for the Soviet Union, America, and that's the justification. And just like it's funny because just like, I mean, look, it's nothing unique about Israel. It's like, it's the same thing NATO did. It's the same thing the entire military industrial complex and the whole, like neoconservatives and just Republican establishment in general did. But they all just used the Soviet Union as the excuse for why you got to do this thing until it went away. And then they just came up with another excuse, which, ended up being Iran and radical Islam. Yeah, right. But like, it's so funny. It's like, so back in that time, it's funny because even as it's like the similar thing, like where they build up the nuclear threats of, say, Saddam or the mullahs in Iran or whatever. But back then, they were building up the threat of the Soviet Union in order to justify the same shit. And you could just see in hindsight how full of shit they're. Just like they're full of shit every time, It's like every time they're just full of shit.
When you say they, I mean, who was Team B, right? It was the neoconservatives that they created this group to do a reassessment of the CIA's estimations of Soviet military power, and where they came up with there's an entire fleet of brand new, super high tech, completely silent Soviet nuclear submarines. And the more we can't find them anywhere, the more it proves how silent they are and how many of them there are out there. And all these
you can't. I know it sounds like you're making this shit up, dude. I've literally read, I don't know if you remember this, but this was when me and you first, when we hung out, we had like met a couple times and we had podcasted a few times, but me and you first hung out like a bunch was on that Tom Woods cruise. And I remember literally, I just started talking to you about Team B. And then you were like, oh, your shit, dude. You've been reading about this. And then we had like a whole conversation about this, like the first night. But it is, dude, it was literally like, this is literally in like government CIA reports where they would literally use, you can't make up how insane this is, that the evidence that Russia had these new high-tech undetectable subs was, look, we can't detect them. Look at it right here. And this was literally the argument that they made, always just a justification about, always just exaggerating blatantly, clearly, like intentionally, dishonestly, exaggerating the threat to try to justify more militarism, higher defense budgets, like just the same thing over. And it's funny. It's fun to look back at the old ones because it's even so much more obvious how full of shit the same people always are. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Crowd Health, longtime sponsor of this podcast. I love this company. With Crowd Health, you can finally rid yourself of the bureaucracy of the healthcare system and take agency over your own health. Crowd Health just introduced the Black Swan membership. It's the healthcare alternative for people who want autonomy over their care, their costs, and their lifestyle. They just need a little help with the Black Swan events that happen in life. Well, now for just $95 a month, you get access to a team of health bill negotiators, low-cost prescriptions, lab testing tools, and a database of low-cost, high-quality doctors vetted by Crowd Health. You stay in control without insurance and their networks dictating your care. And what if something major happens? You pay the first $15K, and then the Crowd steps in to help fund the rest. It feels like the options that we used to have before Obamacare messed everything up. And if you use the promo code POTP, it's only $80 for the first 3 months. Visit joincrowdhealth.com and use the promo code POTP to get that deal, $80 for the first 3 months. Crowd Health is not insurance. Opt out. Take your power back. This is how we win. Joincrowdhealth.com, promo code POTP. All right, let's get back into the show.
Right. It's like watching old movie tone news with all the trumpets and stuff. Where it's just, boy,
Right.
it's pretty ham-handed kind of propaganda here, you know.
Right.
But yeah,
right.
Andrew Coburn, the great Andrew Coburn wrote a book called The Threat that came out in 1981 about how the Soviet Union's military was so overblown and how their tanks didn't work. They had no gasoline. Their soldiers had no boots, no ammo. The tanks that they had at the time would cut your arm off half the time when you tried to reload the thing and whatever. It was just, they had no morale. Everybody's just sitting around smoking Victory brand cigarettes and drinking vodka and doing nothing. And I saw Mearsheimer said on Tucker that he kind of got himself in a little bit of trouble in that era because he also went on a tour of Eastern Europe and said that the Soviet military in Eastern Europe is far less than it's cracked up to be, and that kind of thing. And so that was the real estimation of what was going on at that time. And I mean, you can get the book from Coburn. It came out in 81 saying this is all just, you know, nonsense, paper mache army over there. And then, but Robert Gates and the CIA, they were so busy lying about how the Soviet Union was 12 feet tall that they completely missed it, that the Soviet Union was falling apart. And like, that was like, at the time, they were famous for like the Central Intelligence Agency had no idea that their primary enemy was in the middle of ceasing to exist, completely disintegrating, where there's not a damn thing left. And they were the last ones to know.
It's not even just that it's their prime enemy. It's that, again, up until that point, the intelligence state as we know it is 40 years old. You know what I mean? It's and its entire raison d'etre is this, like the entire justification for it existing is to know what the hell's going on with the Soviets. And when it comes to the fact that they're collapsing, not only do they miss it, but they like I remember there's, you know, like dude, there were like the neocons who were attacking Reagan when he was talking about like détente with the Russians in the late 80s. And it was like 88, 89, like around that time. And they're attacking him because he just guaranteed another, reign of dominance for the Soviet Union. And you're like, dude,
Munich.
They
call him Chamberlain at Munich. Norman Podhoretz called Ronald Reagan Chamberlain at Munich.
Right.
Three years before the Soviet Union ceased to exist.
I know, it's unbelievable.
Well, it goes to show who the neocons are. And by the way, I was just trolling through YouTube and I saw some random girl had a YouTube video about what is a neocon anyway. And then she's reading Pat Buchanan's book, Where the Right Went Wrong. And I'm like, all right, well, I don't even have to watch the rest of this. I know she's on the right track. And whoever that is, that's a whole new audience that's being like, who the hell is Leon Trotsky? And what's that got to do with the Republican Party? And I'm confused, Catch up, everybody, catch up.
Dude, it really is, by the way. It is, I got to say, there's something that at least on the war front, which really is the most important thing for so many different reasons. It's just the most important thing about government. It's always banking and war, and those two things are so goddamn interconnected and related, and that's a big part of it too.
By the way, I even got to talk about Austrian business cycle theory with Lex for a minute there.
Oh, that's great.
For ruining everything.
That's awesome. It really is such an important message to drive home, especially these days. But I've just never, so like, okay, on the Austrian economics front, like on that stuff you're talking about, I don't feel like, oh, I'm tremendously encouraged. Everyone's waking up. The younger people really understand this. Like, we still got our work cut out for us there. And but man, on the foreign policy front, especially with young people, it does just, dude, there's something cool about kind of being, as I was getting at the beginning, just being in the camp that we've been in this game for a while now, and seeing the fact that, like, dude, it's like people like Mitt Romney wrote books, you know what I mean? But like, no one is reading the idea that you would have heard a young person go, yeah, I've just been passing around Mitt Romney's book, dude, and yo, you got to read this. But like, of course not. But you do see Pat Buchanan out there, and there's something cool. This kind of like like the Douglas McGregor quote that you mentioned, but it's just like, oh, these days it's like, yeah, it does seem like these ideas really are winning out and getting more traction, particularly amongst like the young right wingers. I really see that,
Which, by the way, man, I don't know if I told you this, that they reviewed Provoked in Parameters, which is the journal of the Army War College.
Oh, that's awesome, dude.
And they said it was the, at least last I heard, it was the second most downloaded book review they ever did after Bloodlands by Timothy Snyder.
Wow.
It's like a big deal. So that means that's the U.S. Army Officer Corps is who reads that journal, dude. Yeah,
I mean, it's just like, yeah, we just never had things like this happening before. And I do have to say, like, even I said particularly the right wingers, but I do also think that this, for whatever reason, and there's several of them, but the war in Gaza really did shake the anti-war left back into existence to some degree, at least, after many years of being kind of lulled to sleep. I think there are a lot of reasons for that. I think anyway, whatever, we can get into that some other time. But it just does seem like, kind of going forward, I was thinking a lot about this, kind of, as much of a like ridiculous shit show as this debate that I did last night was.
That thing was wild, man.
Look, I don't know if I don't know. I was thinking maybe I'll do a little like I'll record some thoughts on that at some point and get into it a little bit more. Maybe not. I don't know. But there was something about it. What I thought was kind of what was just interesting to me about it afterward. And
wait, hold that thought. What was funny was Lex told me, he goes, yeah, did you see the debate with Dave? Or I asked him, yeah, he goes, yeah, I watched it last night as I was going to sleep. Watching Dave Smith always calms me. So he was like chilling watching that debate last night. Whereas I watched it this morning going, oh man, whoa.
Oh, well, I was
it was really a lullaby to Mr. Friedman, that debate.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. But it was, I don't know, it was a weird experience. And then seeing, it was like one of these, seeing the reaction today. I mean, it's exactly what, you would kind of expect it to be.
Yeah, the comment section was brutal, dude.
And it's interesting. I've been in a lot of these debates now where that ends up being the result. Like the comment section is just like, oh my God. It's not just like, oh, you beat this guy in a debate. It's like, yo, this guy just like, I'll never look at him the same type shit. And look, again, this wasn't anything I did. It was just what he brought to the debate. And maybe I could have handled it differently or something. I don't ever know what the right move is there. But the thing I've been thinking about today off it was just kind of, there's like a few things that were interesting takeaways to me from the whole thing. One of them was that it's just crazy that like, this guy who was at the New York Times for a decade has to come through me, and he's picking the fight with me to try to gain relevance. And then he's got to just come take this spanking from me. Like, it's just so weird. I don't know. It's just a strange situation. And then on top of that, what was very interesting to me was that, so he essentially, and Scott, you know the ends of this more than some people who may not, but we were doing a whole thing in the Libertarian Party for years where I was kind of planning on running, on the LP ticket, and I did a lot of debates in that time, and we were kind of prepped and ready for the point I'm just making is I've spent years of my life knowing that it's very plausible there'll be a scenario where a mainstream media person is saying, hey, how about this connection with you, blah blah blah. And I've always just kind of, me and you have talked about this for a year, you just flip that around on them. Who the fuck are you to be outraged about me, motherfucker? Look at the track record you guys have. And so here I am, right? So this was one of my major takeaways from it. It was kind of the first time I ever got to do that to someone from the New York Times.
Right.
There were people, Cuomo didn't come at me like that. He didn't come at me with oh, you talked to Christopher Cantwell or whatever. You know what I mean? He came at me with other things. So I didn't, but it was just crazy that I got to do that to him, and he just had no response for it. I just sat there and went, who was your best friend at the New York Times? Was it Judith Miller? You want to talk about how she got 1 million people killed? What's your point? I spoke with Richard Spencer once. You worked with Judith Miller. And then he goes, I'm not here to defend Judith Miller. And you're like, of course not. Who could? She can't defend herself. The paper apologized for Judith Miller. Obviously, you can't defend you. And so that was really interesting to me. And then the other thing that was interesting was just that he goes, look, I'm not going to defend the government of Israel. And you're just like, wow, so that's where we're at. You have to come take a spanking by me, and you have to come on and go, yeah, I can't defend the New York Times. I can't defend Israel. I don't know. It's just because at this point, how the fuck could anyone? He didn't even pretend. He couldn't even pretend to try to put up an argument.
All he had on you was that you made a joke. You just wanted to replay the joke that was obviously everyone could understand the underlying premises of the joke. You're on the line with a white nationalist. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's the joke. That's the kind of thing he would think. Get it? Party har har har. Oh no.
Yeah.
Dave, I'm so offended.
That's what they'll say.
No, he makes a great avatar for the times. Look,
this
is how it should have always been, Dave. What you're talking about is it should have always been us versus these guys, and we'd have whooped them back then too. You know, I mean, the few chances that I had to go on TV back 10 years ago when I lived in LA, I always kicked the guy's ass. Whenever we were on the Kennedy show, it would always be you or me or Spike Cohen or whatever other libertarian versus a Republican and a Democrat. And we always won.
Every time.
So
literally back then, I remember it was literally because it was almost it'd be I forget exactly the rotation, but every week it would one episode would be me, one episode would be you, one episode would be Spike Cohen. Every week, that's what he did. And every time I wasn't on the show, I would just be on my phone, and you'd get the you'd see the video, and I'd be like, oh, let me go watch Spike Cohen kick everybody's ass. Let me go watch Scott kick everybody's ass. It's just every single time. There's no and it is I remember back in the, me and you are both going to Ron Paul's birthday party here in a few days. And I remember back then, that was kind of the thing where they would black him out so much and the media wouldn't cover him. And they'd only give him some of those debates, he got 6 minutes of speaking time total. There were a couple where he got nothing, but they'd give him a few minutes. But in those few minutes, he just fucked everybody up.
Yep.
And, I really do
if the social media was then the way it is now, he'd have won, man. I mean, he was on MySpace. Everybody changed their MySpace picture to Ron in 2008. That was where we were then. So it's just
dude, it's the greatest,
doesn't compare.
It's the greatest tragedy in the goddamn world that Ron Paul can't just be the age he was in 2008 in 2025. Because, dude, the landscape today, man, of having Rogan and Tucker, and I mean, dude, he would go on a massive, it would be Rogan, Tucker, Candace, Theo Vaughn, Patrick Bet-David, all these guys just go around and just destroy everybody. I don't see how it's possible he wouldn't have won. In today's environment.
I'm so mad about that. I'm mad that the economy crashed in September of 2008 instead of September of 2007. Because, man, if it had collapsed in September 2007, he'd have been elected. because he is the only one who could explain the boom and bust. And
the only
it literally crashed like 3 weeks after he finally dropped out of the race.
All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Kalshi. I've been seeing them more and more on social media. If you're like me, you've probably seen them all over the place on social media. I personally have downloaded the app and have been checking it out. Kalshi is America's first fully regulated prediction market, CFTC approved in all 50 states. You can bet on just about anything, cash in, or just see what the world's thinking without the mainstream filter. It's always interesting to watch trends when there's money on the line and what people are betting on, whether interest rates are going to go up or down, or how the midterm elections are going to go. All very interesting stuff. Go sign up at kalshi.com/Dave. You can sign up there and start trading right away and see where the markets are. That's Kalshi, where your gut meets real money. All right, let's get back into the show. But I'll tell you from my perspective, what you got to understand from my perspective too, it was such an amazing time to come into libertarianism, because literally I got introduced to Ron Paul in the Giuliani moment. So this is late 2007. And then I got really interested in him. I'm sorry, that's right. It was early 2007. And then I got really, really interested in him through the presidential campaign, and I was really dove into the rabbit hole of becoming who I am today. And so then when the economy crashed, it was like, no way, dude. Oh, they were totally right about it was like this great kind of shot of confirmation of oh no, this really is, you're on to some good shit here. But it is just, we've always said this, and this is, it's like when you have the truth on your side, you want free speech, and you don't care about censoring other people, because you're like, whoa, no, let them talk right. More. But another, I was even saying the other day, I stood up, I don't know who they are, never met, but I stood up for those Nelk Boys guys a little bit, because people were giving them a lot of shit. Like, you shouldn't even have platformed Benjamin Netanyahu if you're going to give him a softball interview. But I was like, hey, dude, there's nothing wrong with that, actually. Let him talk. It's better. More talking than less talking is always better. You never know what interesting soundbite you might get out of a guy. Sometimes they're more likely to reveal something in a friendly environment. Like, there's use in all of these things. But I will say, to the point I was making before, it was pretty goddamn interesting. Did you see that, dude? Did you follow that at all? There was evidently
only on the smallest thing I saw where somebody else was talking about them. I forget who, and they just played the clip where they're arguing about, do you like McDonald's or Burger King cheeseburgers better? And it's just like, oh man.
Well,
this week, so boys, really, jeez.
Well, let me if you didn't know this, let me change that attitude that you had about that with a different piece of information. What's interesting, so these guys are they're like a huge podcast for 20-something-year-old dudes, I think.
First I heard of them here.
But me too. But they're not for us. You know what I mean? They're for young people. But they're huge, and their audience was up in arms over it, dude. They had to apologize. I mean, he said, I'm not apologizing, but made an apology video. Then they had to have they had Bassem Youssef on to scold them for being so soft on them. And then it's like the thing I was saying before, where now the market pressure from your audience is like, yo, dude, you better make up for that. What are you doing? And now they gotta go have hardcore critics of Israel come on to come fuck it. It's like there's just, so even that part of it was, to me, the entire, if the plan for Netanyahu was to go on the Nelk Boys and win over the young bros, it's like, dude, that did not happen at all.
Hey man, there's the new poll said that 50% of Republicans are opposed to Israel now, on overall just approval or disapproval, and it was much higher. I'm sorry, I forget the numbers. Much higher for under 49. So it's only the older people. I just crossed the line in the no, I'm not 50 yet. I'm still through 49 here. Through 49, not up to 49.
There you go.
So yeah, no, we're better than by far the majority, right? Way better than the majority. It's 50% when you include all the baby boomers too. And on the Democratic side, it's 73%. Never mind leftists who are unanimous. Okay.
Yeah.
But But among liberals and moderates and sort of barely left of centerists, it's just, and this is what, I've always said about, the left-wing anti-war movement. You say whatever you want about these people and their potential agriculture policy if they were ever to seize control of the apparatus of power in Washington or whatever. We need the leftists to be the pressure on the liberals to stop being so damn bad on everything. And on the very worst things, especially like torturing people to death and launching wars and bailing out banks. And the liberals, if it was up to them, they would just be nothing but devils. And so the leftists are actually better than them on a few things. And so we need that for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Right. There are a lot of things that leftists are much worse than liberals on. And so, of course, we got to be careful, too. But in terms of like some liberal Democrat congresswoman out in California somewhere, does she have to deal with leftists screaming at her for supporting Israel all day, or doesn't she? And the answer is she has to, right? Like if there's not left-wing pressure against her, she will vote to give Israel every last cent of wealth in California if necessary, right? Like Nancy Pelosi said, if America fell and Washington, D.C. burnt to the ground, the Capitol building burnt to the ground, the very last thing standing forever would still be our support for Israel. Well, that's only true when leftists are quiet, right? If the pressure from the left on the liberals is strong enough, they can't act that way. They just can't. And it's come to a head on the left. It's coming to a head on the right. And then where are the Israelis going to go? Russia? China?
Yeah, that's so.
I don't think the Chinese want them. And what are they good for other than stealing American technology?
Right, really. So well, it's and there's also well, look, and I will say there's also just something there's something about anti-war leftists that, as much as we may disagree with them on a lot of other things, it's like when they're standing up for that, they're just standing up for something that's right, and they're against something that's wrong, and it's hard to not admire when someone's doing that. I don't know, no matter how much you disagree with them. And I will say this isn't like a completely well thought out argument. I'm kind of just speaking off the top of my head here, but I do kind of feel like there is a little bit something to like, you want the left being focused on anti-war because then they can't ruin your society as much, and they have less energy to put into that. And I really do think there is something about how, like, my buddy Kurt Metzger was like such a fucking incredibly funny comedian.
I love that guy,
dude. He's so funny.
Someday, man.
Oh, dude. Almost, he lives in Austin, dude. I'm gonna be out there in a couple. Yeah, I'm gonna be out there in a couple weeks. We'll all go to dinner or something like that, dude.
Cool, man.
If he's in town, he travels too. But if he's in town, we'll definitely all link up. But he had that bit about such a great bit, but he was like, say what you will about Vladimir Putin, but he sure did cure COVID.
Right.
And it was this bit about that. And, it's like, say what you will about Benjamin Netanyahu, but he sure did cure wokeism. And, so many people say that, like, the fall of wokeism was Donald Trump getting elected again. And, like, that is true. I'm not, like, downplaying, like, that is true. And there was just a large rejection of it. And there were, like, the boycotts, I really think, from a couple years ago of, like, Target and Bud Light. I think that really did start to, like, I'm not saying there were a lot of factors involved in this, but there's just no question that this was, like, a major, major factor. Like, and I will give, I really do think, by the way, I think a lot of the Zionist hawks get this a little bit wrong, and they make it like their own self-serving narrative where they'll say something like, they'll be like, the reason the left is anti-Semitic is because they see Jews as like the European white ones, and they see everything as oppressor versus oppressed. And so they really just hate Jewish people or something like that. I think, I will say this, I think there is some truth to the fact that in this war, it's much more easy to paint who is the oppressor versus the oppressed. And one of them sure does look a lot more European, and one of them looks a lot more brown. And I do think that made it easier for the left to kind of recognize what's going on, and to feel comfortable, because like there's no question, like, there were wars that they just didn't care about. Me and you have known this, there's like Iraq war up until Gaza. Me and you were still being anti-war, and there sure was a whole lot of gap there where the anti-war leftists were just not up in arms in big numbers like this. So there was something about this one. But at the same time, it's like, once those leftists started protesting the babies fucking being slaughtered in Gaza, there was just, it was impossible to create the same type of outrage about like someone called a dude in a dress a dude in a dress. Like it just, it just really did. It broke that whole thing up. And I do think that that's something that sane people should be happy about. Like, what do you want your left-wingers doing? You want them going around talking about how like that man in a dress isn't a perv, let him near your 8-year-old, or you want them saying, hey, government, stop blowing up babies? I prefer the latter.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing is too, is it's showing where there's so many, because especially because of what Israel is doing, is just so horrific, deliberately systematically hurting civilians the way that they are. So then you have so many right wingers, as you're saying, people like Tucker Carlson, of course, Candace Owens and others are just absolutely as opposed to this as they can be. And you have good liberals and progressives and leftists who agree with that, who, because it's so horrific, it's really a very high priority of theirs right now.
Right.
And they go, wow, Tucker Carlson ain't so bad. I see the comments. I never thought I'd like Candace Owens, but I do now. It says some leftist, right? I remember her from back when she disagreed with me about something, but boy, she sure is a powerful ally. And so then, but that helps kill woke too, because it destroys the whole narrative of the right wing being just the evil white supremacist.
Yes, that's such a good point.
Leaders of the right actually really got soul here, man. You can't deny it.
And that's right. That's such a good point. And also, it's not, because even more specifically to drill down, what they always try to scare you with is the extreme right wing. You know, they always go, look at these extreme right wingers, and now just know that's everybody. You know, like look at Richard Spencer, and that's also Donald Trump. And so, but now when you're a good anti-war leftist, you look around, you go, the extreme right wing is Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and the people who are actually really great on this issue that you put so much importance on. And then it just makes you start to realize that, like, which is a really important realization, that the problem isn't left-right in the way you think. It's like, it's this center part here that's all attached to the establishment. That's really the problem. And you know, while there are many, you know, conflicting views amongst far leftists and far right wingers, it actually, you know, whatever. It just, obviously our prescription would be like, yeah, but liberty solves just about 90% of this. And then it's just, you go about your way, you go about your way, and that's that.
And by the way, too, for liberals and conservatives, we don't have to work together. We can just all do the same thing at the same time.
Right, exactly.
Like, if you're too worried about getting cooties on you, it doesn't matter. You just do the same thing as us and do it as hard as you can, and we'll see you there. You know what I mean? And get it done that way. So it doesn't even have to be that broad of a coalition. It just has to be the loosest broad network where it is. And this is what I've always has said, you know, like if you watch my old speech about where after the primary campaign in 12, I gave that speech where I said, Dr. Paul, you should keep running, but you should make Dennis Kucinich your running mate. And you should make a new political party called the Democratic Republicans. And then you should demand that Obama fire Joe Biden and replace him on the ticket with Mitt Romney. And then they'll be the war party of taxes, tyranny, and death. And we'll be the party, the Democratic Republicans, the party of the American people. And then we'll finally have a two-party system in this country and people can make their choice. That's the real realignment that we need. And Kucinich is bad on plenty of things and disagreed with Ron on plenty of things. But could anybody deny that that would have been first of all, a better race to run with such starker options and just such a different divide in the way that we're splitting the opposing parties. And then that their presidency, the Ron Paul, Dennis Kucinich presidency wouldn't have been superior to Obama too. And then the coming of Trump in reaction to that, I think we could have done better, you know? And then that's the realignment that we need, is the people versus the power. It's obvious, right? You don't have to be a commie to think like that. You just be an American. That's why the slogan, the 99%, was so great. If they had put some of their weirder left-wing stuff away and actually tried literally to represent the 99% as best they could, maybe even the 99.9%, then that could have, you know, obviously gone a lot further. But that's the whole thing, is because it really is the same problem here as it is all around the world. too few people with way too much power. And of course, as the libertarians always argue, this is why we end up being anarchists, is because you're not going to talk us out of private ownership of the means of production. But then as long as you have a state, the wealthiest of those owners are going to use that state, for their own advantage in such a way that it requires everybody else to have to come together against them in this way. And so that sucks. And that's why we shouldn't have a state at all. It's not just in the Fed, it's in the Congress that created the Fed,
Right. Well, look, I mean, there's the state probably isn't being ended or withering away anytime soon. But man, it is like I do, and I've been talking about this. This has been a major theme of mine for a while now on the podcast. But it does seem like we're living through some crazy experiment where nation states, powerful modern nation states, have always relied on propaganda and controlling, the narrative, controlling the discourse, controlling the flow of information. As we know, right, Scott, like it's not a coincidence that this is, more kind of basic libertarian anarchist insight stuff, but it's not a coincidence that, like, of all the things that governments can monopolize, and you could think of anything, they could make shoe factories, or they could make, telescopes or whatever. But they always, had a monopoly, or not always, but modern nation states all have a monopoly on, like, children's education and public radio waves and television stations and post offices, which, don't seem like a big one now, but was a really, really big form of communication for many years. It's like, it's not a coincidence that they've always tried to monopolize, like, who controls the information. And it does seem like, really, in a profoundly new way, we're just like, now they're running with that entire apparatus being broken. And the question now is, like, can you do that? Can you have government minus propaganda? Can you, Donald Trump, like, there really was something, and this was another thing that I think was really fascinating about the 12-day war, if we want to call it that for now, with all the caveats that we made earlier in the show, is that you saw that, like, I've just never seen a thing where a president was flirting with a policy where you just saw right away, you go, oh, if he does this, he's going to lose, like, such a huge percentage of his base over this. Like, there just never was a situation where George W. Bush was flirting with doing something and you went, dude, if he does this, Bill O'Reilly and Sean Hannity are going to flame him tomorrow. Like, there just never was a situation where if Obama did something, Rachel Maddow was going to take him to task the next day. Yet with Donald Trump, he was in that situation. And the Epstein thing, the Epstein thing is a good example of this too. It's like, this is just, there's something so new about this. Even the other day, I was making a big deal out of some of these polls where you, like, Donald Trump has fallen to his lowest approval rating, that people hate his handling of the Epstein thing. They hate him on all these things. And then the Democrats who are down in the dumps haven't gained 1 point from all that. Not one person has gone, oh, screw you guys, we're going over here. They all wait. No, obviously, we still remember. It's like, this is just so new in a lot of ways. I don't know. It's very interesting.
And it's a crisis. I mean, that's what you're talking about for them.
Yeah.
And in fact, I was just showing a friend of mine the old documentary. I don't know if you've ever seen the documentary. I'm sure you've read the book, but Manufacturing Consent by Noam Chomsky and Edward Herman.
Yeah. Great book. Yeah.
And so there's a documentary about this too. And it's, mostly a documentary about the propaganda model and the point of the book, but it's also a documentary about Noam Chomsky himself and his life and his career and all this stuff. It's really great. It came out in, I'm going to say 93, 94. So, like, the internet is just brand new and it's not as relevant at all. It's not, in fact, it may have even come out earlier than that. So it's all just about the New York Times and about the major TV networks and the way that they handle their propaganda, and as compared to radio and whatever, and this kind of thing. There's so much insightful stuff in there, but just the point being, what you're talking about is, it really is a revolution. And I don't think it really even hit. I mean, the internet did a lot. Antiwar.com was important and all kinds of things mattered a lot. But the first time that I ever could really directly relate the difference made was in the slaughter in Gaza in 2014, because that was the one, it was the first time that the polls showed that the American people overall sided with the Palestinians over the Israelis. And it was just because of Twitter and Facebook. Hashtag Gaza under attack. And people could just see women and children being blown to bits. by the Israelis, hiding safe behind their walls and whatever. And that was just unheard of, that narrative would go again, like you were just saying. We're like, I don't know, the Jews are whiter, they're our friends, we're on the Israeli side, what's the problem? You know what I mean? And then in this case, all of a sudden the American people, by and large, siding with the Palestinians. And it was simply because of 3G retweets, man. That was it. They can take a picture, upload it, and then people got a hashtag and a retweet, and it gets out there, and that was enough, and it was broken. And then you can see how, the Global Engagement Center and all the Twitter censorship and all that really escalated after that, because they realized, they like these social media platforms. They like pushing free speech in countries they want to overthrow, because a lot of times those are sort of gray democracies with a lot of censorship themselves. So if they can get everybody using onion routers and having and improving free speech technology and methods in those countries, makes it easier to do a color-coded revolution and overthrow the thing, right? But for the same reason that they want to censor us so that we can't have control over our own society, when that was supposed to be the point over here in the first place. And the point of overthrowing those governments, they claim, is to make them good, free, self-governing democracies like our own. And so you're right, though, man, it's coming to a head. I keep saying it every day, that other than Trump himself, Tucker Carlson's the most important man in America, because he's no longer on Fox News. Now he's on the internet. Now he's free. And now what the hell are they going to do with that guy? You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to give any bad ideas. But I'm just saying, like, for them, it's a crisis. Candace Owens going on and saying, listen, I would rather saw off my own foot than ever support Israel again. I saw her today. She said, I went from PragerU to I'm going to be your enemy for the rest of my life. How do you like that? And that's a paraphrase, but what are, in fact, they going to do with this charismatic young woman who is going to be around,
Well, there was something, it's and again, not to make this all about me. It's just that, I'm living life as me. So I do think about that from time to time. But this was another thing that I was just thinking about the debate I did last night, and I think it's a broader theme of what you're talking about. Now that kind of goes hand in hand, where it's like, okay, so like, one of the things that stuck out to me about the debate with Alex Berenson, which again, like, I'm not trying to sit here and say, hey, I won a debate last night. I maybe I'm guilty of doing that sometimes, but like, I mean, it really was ridiculous. Like he was like on the level of like some of the like libertarian guys with no following who I used to debate, who you'd be like, oh, you just come on, that you can't do that in a debate. But it was kind of like this kind of fascinating thing where Alex Berenson, first of all, he telegraphed to me that this is what he was going to do in the debate, which, just doesn't seem wise, especially if you're going to use such cheap tactics. Then at least the point of it would be to try to surprise the guy with it. You know what I mean? And not like he posted it about like how I had interviewed Christopher Cantwell and he was digging up into me. And then he posted a thing on Twitter where he goes, this is going to go so bad for Dave. He's never been confronted by a real reporter who's actually dug into him. Like, he actually thought that like that old model smear thing was gonna work. Like, I'm gonna do this, and then the crowd response is gonna be like, yeah, you took him down. Oh my God. He made an off-color joke 10 years ago. You got, like, it's like they're so nice, like daydream. They're so trapped in this old model that they have this inability to like adapt. And to recognize that, like, oh, read the room. That's not that. This is going to make everyone laugh at you. This is not going to this isn't going to work. And so the old model was like, I'm going to ruin your fucking life. Like, in one way or the other. Like, that was the old model. It's like, I will smear you. You will be dropped by your publisher. You will be fired from this company. You will be removed from the conversation, and I will ruin your life for doing this. And this was effective for years and years. And this happened to like so many good people got ruined like this and really effectively taken out of the national conversation. And now that doesn't work anymore. Like this, like Alex Berenson doing that to me, objectively speaking, has zero effect on me. It was just a fun night of watching popcorn for all of my fans. Nothing more than that. And now I move on with everything I'm doing the same. Like, it's just like, I don't know, we're in the new model now, and Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson like me. So suck a dick. Like, there's nothing you can do with any of this. But so now it's not just that it doesn't work anymore, but as you were alluding to with Candace Owens, it just has the effect of you sitting there going like, hey, that guy just tried to ruin my life. I mean, like, yeah, it missed. Like the bullet missed me and didn't hit, but like, dude, you just took a shot at my head. Well, now we're at war. Now I'm going to ruin you. You know what I mean? And so it's like not only does it not work anymore, but it went from like water on a fire to like water on an electric fire, where you're like, shit, no, dude, you're just spreading this like way, way, way further. It's just fascinating to watch. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. If you are considering starting therapy, I would just tell you that I personally have benefited from it in the past, and I know lots of other people who have as well. And if you're thinking about starting, give BetterHelp a try, because there's no easier way to do it. It is convenient, it's online, it's suited to your schedule. It's the way to do therapy in the 21st century. All you do is you fill out a brief questionnaire and they match you with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So rediscover your curiosity today with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/problem and you'll get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/problem for 10% off your first month. All right, let's get back into the show.
Yeah. It's exciting, man. It's really great. This is sort of, going back to the dawn of the internet. This is what Timothy Leary was, had in mind. It's like, you'll have this, this equality of information spread throughout the world. And then that will do the same thing to the power. It will dilute the power to the people, away from the center and out to the people, because they'll be the ones with the information. So it's a long time coming. And of course, as Snowden showed, and Bamford before him, that, it's, and all the great whistleblowers before him, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, the whole thing was created to enslave us in the first place, but I think we're doing a pretty good job of using it back against them. And life is like skateboarding, man. Generations come real fast. Things change real quick. You have brand new people coming in who, I think you mentioned this to me before. You'll be flipping through YouTube and find some channel where some guy has 1 million followers or 2, and you never heard of him before, but he's great. And he's doing his own thing out there in some other corner of society you didn't know about, but like, good for him, man. It looks like he's doing a good job too, kind of thing. And it's just more and more of that going on everywhere. All I ever hoped for, like when I was doing radio and first starting out in radio in the late 1990s, was my biggest ambition, I guess, would be that I would have the show that comes on after Rush Limbaugh in the afternoon in a city somewhere. Right. That would be the most effect I could ever have. And that would be just enough, essentially, just like we're doing pirate radio in South Austin, is just enough to get this off my chest, but not ever really imagining that it would change anything or have any effect on anything, really, because why? Nobody really thinks that. That's, delusions of grandeur to think that you're going to go from driving a cab to talking where anybody can actually hear you. You know what I mean? So yeah, this is better than I ever hoped for, I guess, at this point.
Yeah, well, it's also I guess whatever. It's there's a lot of obviously like factors coming together to create this whole moment, but there is something too where there was, and we've talked about this before as well, but there was, like, say for example with like the neoconservatives, and few people know the history of this better than you, but there was kind of like there's just no question that like the first generation neoconservatives were like objectively more impressive than the second generation, like just in terms of like thinkers, like in terms of being people, in terms like all of them. Like Irving Kristol is more impressive than Bill Kristol, and Norman Podhoretz is more impressive than
John Podhoretz by a lot.
But yeah, like by a lot. Like Norman Podhoretz had some bad politics, but like I read a couple of his books and they were interesting books. Like he was an interesting guy.
Worthless bum.
Just like literally just like like this fat little weirdo. Like I mean, and then there were, again, like when I was like a little kid, the media that my mom would have been watching, even on like TV news, would have been like firing line with William F. Buckley, or maybe like Crossfire with Pat Buchanan and Kinsley and some of these guys. These were intelligent people. Whatever you think of them, like this wasn't Sean Hannity and Stephen Colbert. Like it got and somewhere around like the 90s and around the time of kind of the well, Fox News was a big part of it, but the unipolar moment was a big part of it, and the kind of phony prosperity of the 90s was a part of it. But it also the neocons and Fox News, as you say, which obviously were very linked, but they started celebrating these people as geniuses who just weren't particularly impressive. Like, remember that everyone used to always say that, like in the neocon circles, they'd always say that Charles Krauthammer was like this. Yeah. Like they would always do. Yeah, well, they would speak of them like they were these geniuses, and then you'd like read their stuff, and you're like, they've never said anything interesting. Like, these people are just not. And it just got to this level where you're talking to someone like I'm talking to Alex Berenson, and you're just like, yo, dude, you are so much less impressive than you think you are. Yeah. Like,
same thing
really?
happened on, did you see Alyssa Slotkin, the former CIA officer turned congresswoman?
Oh, yes. On Breaking Points?
Yeah, on Breaking Points.
Oh, I shared it on Twitter. It was so great.
Yeah, she's just some lady.
She has nothing
like against her, but just if you measured her up against every other lady that lives in her neighborhood, she's no smarter than them. She didn't know anything better about the world than them. She talked about, I forgot exactly what she said, but talking about her time in the CIA, she sounded like, oh, wow, they really will just hire some lady to be a CIA officer, I guess. There's just nothing impressive there. And these are supposed to be the elite cutting edge of our security forces here. And it's
not even like
she's not, if she could be, have any other job in your town and you wouldn't see her as out of place, just, running whatever shop.
That's like the thing, right? It's like, even with, and it's not even a comment on good or evil. Like, it's like, I regard Bill Buckley as being evil. Right. I'm just saying, yeah, right. Like, Bill Buckley doing a talk show with Gore Vidal is like a heady conversation. These are two people with IQs north of 135 who are discussing things. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, but now it's just like what permeates our society. Like, and it's funny when people say this thing where, like, the biggest knock on me now, really since the Douglas Murray debate, and I've kind of been at a bit of a higher profile, and the only knock, like, it seems like they have on me is, like, you're just a comedian. So what does the comedian know about this? And you're like, listen, buddy, I just can't explain it enough. I know. I'm not making the argument that I'm up here. I'm making the argument that they're down here. Right. Like, yes, it's like, yes, I can go on. Dude, I can go on a debate with fucking the #1 show at CNN host Chris Cuomo, or the #1 British intellectual Douglas Murray. And you're like, dude, these people are not smart. I don't know what you guys are saying. These are not, like, it's not even a comment of good or evil. It's that was one of the thing that I was blown away by Alex Berenson too. Like, it'd be like this thing, like, I'd be like, how's Daryl Cooper a Holocaust denier? And he'd go, well, the Holocaust Museum says so. And I go, right, that's an appeal to authority fallacy though, dude. So you make the argument, like, why is he a Holocaust? And you go, I just told you that the Holocaust Museum said so. Dude, he put out, I know you made the comment when you were arguing with Noam, which was perfect. It's like arguing with a drunk woman when you disprove their thing and then they just say the same thing. Dude, he put out a Substack today and he goes, the Holocaust Museum said that Daryl Cooper was a thing. Like, still just like, wait, you didn't hear the 3 times that you're repeating just a logical fallacy? Like, it is pretty wild. And I think a huge part of this is just that, like, the propagandists there was so much atrophy amongst the propagandist class.
Yeah. And look, it's just like with the anti-Semite thing. Like, Mr. Berenson, you really want to wear that out, making false accusations against people? Because now when people call somebody an anti-Semite, everybody goes, whatever. Anyway, if he is or if he isn't, I'm still on his side against the person tattletaling and pointing their finger at him and calling him that, because I'm just sick and tired of hearing people called that. I don't even want to hear your evidence against the guy, whatever it is that you claim. I don't believe you anyway. I'm sick and tired. So now we're going to do that with Holocaust deniers too, and compare people who actually aren't, not even compare, falsely claim that people who aren't denying the Holocaust, in fact, are. You're going to do that X many times before people just say, I guess that thing never happened after all. I guess we're all deniers now. So, you know what I mean? Like, that's what it, not that that's what they're trying to do, but that's what they're sure to succeed in.
Yeah.
You know, Pee Wee Herman said, that's my name. Don't wear it out. You know what I mean? You can't just, you know, do that repeatedly. We see it right now, right? Look at think of the power of the word racist. That guy's a racist now compared to 15 or 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Right?
No
it's
question.
Just gone. Nobody cares. Same thing with anti-Semite. That guy's an anti-Semite. Oh, why? You say something good about Israel and you're a genocidal lunatic? Piss off. Nobody wants to hear it. So now Berenson wants to do the same thing, you know, just like ratcheting it up to the next level. You know, you got to find something to smear people with. You're going to end up with nothing left to smear anybody with, because there's nothing you can say about anybody that anyone's going to take seriously anymore when it comes to character assassination like that, you know, which whatever is for the good in the end anyway. It always was kind of weird. Like, oh, if people say this one thing, then everybody, you know, turn their back and never engage with them ever again or in any way kind of thing. Like, you can't stop it now, man. With the internet the way it is, whatever the argument is, it can't be too verboten to discuss. Everybody's got to get in there and fight about it, you know?
Yeah. And I think the new, like, you know, because it really is, it's hard to explain like how brand new this is. It's not just as brand new as social media, which really is, you know, relatively speaking, a very brand new phenomenon. Like, it was like, you know, like Obama in 2008, I remember, got a lot of credit for like his team effectively using Twitter and using social media. But like, that's the first one. That was the first presidential election. It's only been a couple cycles that we've even had social media. But then, you know, that freedom of Twitter was very short-lived. You know, then like the censorship regime like kind of rose up, and it's really only been, you know, when I'm talking about like the cancel culture backfiring to the point now where, like, say the guys like Tucker Carlson gets fired from Fox News, he's bigger than he ever was. Our buddy Daryl Cooper is the center of a cancellation campaign. He's bigger than he ever was. Rogan, they try to cancel, is bigger than he ever was. And other guy, Andrew Tate, Nick Fuentes, like all these guys, Alex Jones, like they've all been, you know, kicked off of everything, and they're bigger than that. It just doesn't work anymore. Like, this just doesn't, it's at least as of right now, that ain't working. And in that environment, which is very new, it does almost become this thing where it's like, yeah, you just, sorry, like if somebody's here, they're here, and you got to take on what they're saying, or you know, you can't. But there's no, you can't just like, you can't do the thing where you just smear people out of, you know, out of existence, or smear them out of the argument. You know, it's I do remember there was one. It was very simply, not that it's the most profound thing ever, but I do remember when Christopher Hitchens said this, and you know, Christopher Hitchens was you know, pretty bad on a lot of issues, but yeah, he was, although he was good for saying a good thing every now and then. He did have a great thing about how like Zionism was stupid, and he actually was pretty incredibly, he was really, really good on Iraq War 1. And then went really, really bad on Iraq War 2.
Yeah.
But
he hated Kissinger, so he loved Richard Pearl.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was bad. But I will say, I did read that many years ago. His book on Kissinger was very good. But so, you know, anyway,
the movie.
Yeah, well, but he said this one time, which was like a very great, you know, when he was right, he was great at being right in that snotty British way. But he said a thing where he was like, he goes, he was just talking about people being offended, and he goes, he was like, the only reasonable response when someone tells you that they're offended is, who cares? And why did you ever presume that it mattered at all if you were offended? And like, it was just like a great way to just like put it, where it's just like, it really doesn't mean anything. Like saying I'm offended is like great. And like, that was really the point I was getting at with Alex the other day, where you're just like, it's like I'm offended. And I'm like, I'm 100,000 times more offended. Anyway, what do you got? Yeah, I'm offended. I'm offended that you didn't resign.
Did he really say that?
You know? No, but I mean, like, essentially that was his point.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I'm offended by what you're saying. And it's like, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Like, I'm offended by your, you know, like fucking people at the New York Times. It doesn't matter. And this is just, you just can't call at this point, even if something is legitimately racist or fucking Jew hatey or whatever, it's like, well, then you got to make the argument why they shouldn't be like that and why they're wrong. You can't even just say, you're a bad person, go away. Respond. We're not doing that anymore, you know?
And again, only just because they wore it out. Like, if they hadn't, spent the last few years calling people who don't hate Jews Jew haters,
Yeah.
then people would probably still take that seriously. You got to hold your fire and only, shoot at your intended targets, or otherwise you're all out of ammo. How'd you like
Yep.
that? That was a pretty good metaphor.
Yeah, no, it was very good. And that's right. And you and like I was saying with the effect on Candace or me or whoever, it's like, yeah, and now you're just pissing people off. It's not only are you losing people, but now you're the guy who just shot at them. And
Yeah.
it is like, I did like I lost my cool a bit, I guess, in that debate. And I fucking, I typically don't like call people faggots and stuff like that in a debate. But there is something where it's like, I don't know. I mean, maybe this is me being crazy. Me and you are kind of kindred spirits in the sense that we're always, we say it all the time on the phone, but we're always pissed off teenagers to some degree, even though we're in the position of being right about all this stuff and like winning these debates and stuff. But it is like, I don't know. I just can't there's a certain point where you're like, look, dude, like, this is what I do. This is my job. This is how I support my family. This is my livelihood. And you really, when you call me a Holocaust denier and pin it to your social media, like it is like you're like, I'm trying to ruin your little girl's life. Like that is kind of how I take that. That's not like, I think Dave is wrong. I wanna challenge him to a debate where I can eviscerate him on a topic or something like that. It's like,
Right.
you're trying to smear me, to ruin my career, so like that my kids don't have the good life that I'm trying to give them and they have a shitty life. And then
It reminds me of little girls in first grade where they would tell, like, Susie would tell Sally to not be friends with Mindy anymore.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, don't be friends with her anymore because I don't like her. Now you're not allowed to be friends with them. And then they would have a little fight over who's allowed to be friends with who and this kind of thing. Like, we're grown men talking like that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
listen, that Dave Smith, you don't want to go near him because I heard he was a Holocaust denier from Alex Berenson. You don't want to get your career all cootified from them Smith cooties, not after what Berenson hung on him, And like, and you're right that there was a time not long ago at all that would have worked. Well, maybe not in this particular circumstance, but where that really did work against people a lot more than it ever had any right to, or probably could now.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's there's that is kind of, and I'll tell you, that is a part of the thing that I guess gets me kind of angry about it, which like I try to tell myself, I'll be like, all right, listen, like whatever, it doesn't matter. I know Alex Berenson has no impact on me, but I'm like, hey dude, like only a little bit of time ago this might have really had an impact and you would still be doing it. Like you are doing this to, hopefully in your mind it does have that impact. And
that's what Dubowitz tried to do with me. He didn't call me a Holocaust denier, but in that debate on Lex Friedman's show, he tried to go, well, Scott Horton's worldview is that everything would be fine if it wasn't for the Jews. I was like, oh, that's funny because we've been at this for 4 hours and I hadn't said that yet. He had to come up with that and try to put those words in my mouth because that was the best shot he could take. He didn't have after 4 hours, it couldn't come up with anything I said that was wrong.
Right, exactly. And it just, like you said, they went to the well too many times. It's just too low of a trick at this point. You just kind of can't pull it and it's backfiring. But it's also just like, I don't know, I guess they're, it's like all that it ever required for that shit to not work was just for the other side to get a fair hearing too. And just like, whatever is like, it's like, so what was that? Maybe it was one of your times on Piers Morgan, but like someone asked you're like, hey, which war in the last, 25 years do you not blame on the Jews? And you were like, I don't know what you said, but you're like, I mean, you wrote a book on Afghanistan.
Yeah.
You've never, is anyone going to say you didn't talk about Yemen enough or something like that? Which, like, those are two very important chapters in the terror wars that really had very little to do with like the Israeli lobby,
provoked is this thick, and the only role of Israel in there is Naftali Bennett, the guy who caused September 11th, trying to stop the war right after it started, doing shuttle diplomacy on behalf of the United States, which ultimately undermined him and made him not succeed. But he was trying in good faith, by all indications that I've seen, to do the right thing there. That was his job as the head of a small state, allied with one and friends with the other, and see if he could play middleman in there.
Right.
And so, yeah, I do blame a lot of our Russia policy on the neoconservatives, but it's not that everything that they do is in service of the Likud, except in the largest sense of keeping the American empire active overseas at all costs, because as Brett Stevens says, isolationism is the biggest threat to Israel. American isolationism is.
Right.
Not that that's why neoconservatives support American imperialism or anything. You got to understand that would be anti-Semitic. Brett Stevens, former editor of the Jerusalem Post, wrote in the New York Times.
Yeah, that's right. Former editor of the Jerusalem Post.
Yeah.
They don't make it. It's not that, much of a secret, I guess.
No.
But right. And but so even when they'll say things like that, it's like, look, I also, one of the things that, this is one of the things that Josh Hammer argued during the debate, again, speaking of just like unimpressive arguments, but when I was debating him, he argued, he goes, they asked me like about AIPAC or something like that. And I was like, well, yeah, AIPAC should be registered as a foreign lobby, and like they should, none of you guys should support them. They support woke progressive Democrats, even if they, they're whatever, as a Turning Point USA. And then Josh speaks and he goes, Dave's going to sit here and tell you that the AIPAC is the all-controlling lobby that has full dominance over our government. And yet the JCPOA got signed when AIPAC was against it. And I'm like, wait, first of all, I never said AIPAC was this all-controlling entity that had full control over the government, but like, really? So your big ace up your sleeve is that you can point to one policy that AIPAC was against that got through, that then AIPAC got their way on, by the way? Like, that
was torn up 2 years later.
Yes, at like literally Trump went to AIPAC to get their support when he was running for president. And his opening line of his speech to AIPAC was, we're going to tear up the Iran deal on day one. And like, anyway, but the thing is, like, people try to caricature all this shit, but I don't actually think that Israel has full control of the United States government. I mean, I think we would have overthrown the regime in Iran by now if they did. Like, I think there's really no doubt that if Netanyahu had the full control of Donald Trump's presidency, we would have had a regime change in Iran. It doesn't matter what it would have cost this country. Netanyahu, if that's his decision, he'd absolutely go for it. I don't think there's any way he wouldn't have America go do that. Okay, so like, yeah, they don't have full control. They do have a lot of influence, and we're going to discuss that. And like,
just how much control is permissible when we're talking about a foreign nation state deciding our policy.
Yeah, exactly. And the idea that, like, people even like when as the way you put it, when they phrase it, like, oh, like if you're saying like, oh, if Israel just went away, then everything would be fine. It's like, no, like, we have a giant military industrial complex. We have a Federal Reserve. We have an IRS and an ATF and a CIA. We got a lot of problems over here. It's like, yeah, it happens to be that the neocons like hijacked American foreign policy, but like someone else could have hijacked it and done really bad things with it too. It's just that, like, hey, those are the ones who did. And we're going to talk about that now. If we're talking about how bad George W. Bush and Dick Cheney are, that doesn't imply that if it wasn't them, whoever the president was would be perfect. It's just that, like, no, they're the guys currently ruining everything. And so, yes, let's talk about that. You just can't shut this down once there's an open conversation.
Yep. And look, more and more, I mean, I see it, in your debates and your appearances on these things, the comments all say, man, when something happens, I just say, man, I can't wait to find out what Dave Smith says about this, just because you've earned their respect and credibility over time. They're like, hey, I hear a lot of people with a lot of opinions, but that Smith guy makes a hell of a lot of sense to me on a consistent basis. That's what they say. And it's just, what are you going to do? So this is, with equal access to the market, this is what the free market of ideas delivers. Is it turns out that actually, as you often point out, Bill O'Reilly, when he got kicked off of Fox News, went away. Tucker Carlson exploded. Now, part of that maybe is the timing, but part of it also is that Bill O'Reilly was always being foisted on us, whereas Tucker Carlson really has something to offer. And so, that's the difference is between like AstroTurf and grassroots there, where, I mean, Tucker does come from on high, but he's earned his support from down below by now,
Well, it's a testament to, look, the part of it is an age thing. I think Tucker had a much younger audience. I think Bill O'Reilly's audience was unlikely to figure out what a podcast or an internet show was, but there is something to a passion factor. Cause like, I remember during the years of people who were like getting kicked off YouTube and Facebook and stuff, there were people who I liked, who like I used to watch their YouTube channel, and then they got kicked off, and now they're like, oh, I'm doing my thing over here. And I just never followed them over because like I liked them, but I didn't actually have the effort to like, let me go find their website and join up to that. And now listen to them on a player that I'm not used to listening to. And like, but if it's someone you loved, like you're like, no, I'll go do whatever to go follow that. So like that's a big part of it. For sure, is just how much people, how much closer to his audience Tucker Carlson was. And I think part of that has to be, right, just by the nature of it, that Bill O'Reilly may have been your favorite guy on Fox News, but he wasn't saying anything different than what Sean Hannity was going to say in the hour after him, or than what whoever, was the hour before him, or really have anything. Like, it's like every hour of Fox News was going to be Bill O'Reilly's opinions. He might say it in a little bit better of a way where you like it. Whereas like Tucker Carlson, he leaves and now nobody's going to be saying what Tucker Carlson was saying at Fox News. There's that just inherently, I think, makes you more valuable. And then, look, to your point about people, saying they go to me for this stuff or whatever. It's just, I've benefited a lot from just being lucky, being exposed to the right people, like, no one higher on that list than you, and learning a lot of really good shit from a lot of really good people. But I do think, and this would be my message, my message to like young people who like want to get into the business of doing like what me and you do, or any capacity in this world, is it's like, look, man, like there's the same way that like Ron Paul and the people I admired had it. Like what I have is I have the benefit of a track record now. And the more you kind of build, when you're good on stuff, you just get the benefit of this track record. Like, oh, he was the guy who got Russiagate right, and got COVID right, and got Ukraine right, and got this right. And you know what I mean? And like that, after a while, you build up credibility. Like there's real value, long-term, low tide preference value in sticking to the hardcore libertarian principles during these crazy times. Like you do, it does age well. And I think also that's, I think that's obviously a huge part, as we were saying before, of you and anti-wars kind of, the antiwar.com and all your shows and kind of your explosion is that, you just get to a point where you're like, I don't know, man, we got like 3 decades here of Scott Horton being right about all this stuff. So now when the next thing comes up, I kind of want to hear what he has to say. And I'm going to just start with the de facto, he's probably right about this again.
Yeah. Well, and the fun part too about, especially, kind of locking myself away to write Provoked for a couple of years there, is now there's so many people who've never heard of me before. And then, but I have been doing this for this long.
Right.
They don't know why I know all this stuff if I'm brand new. And you know what I mean? They don't understand where this stuff has come from. I saw someone on in the comments on me and Daryl's show that said, oh, Scott Horton has a show too. Like, yeah, I sure do, man. You wouldn't know it. I admit that. You wouldn't know it, but I sure do.
Yeah.
But so, so that's a little bit, fun part of it too, where, like on the going on Pierce Morgan or whatever, where I'm old enough now, I'm ready to take on General Clark or whoever you got,
Yeah, for sure. And I think that no, it is an interesting, thing. It's kind of like this this you at an interesting time, like right when you and me and a lot of people were kind of like peaking, or no, I don't know, peaking. Hopefully we keep going much higher, but like at the time when we were like kind of coming up and really kind of hitting that, like breaking that wave where it's like, oh, you've hit this critical mass where like you're really a player in this world. You buried your nose in writing this like gigantic book. And then it's cool as you come out of that to be like, oh, this you know is a lot different than it was after your last previous books, where now you're getting on these like huge shows and so many more people are reading the thing and so many more people are hearing what you have to say. It's just, again, listen, you know, you did this 10-hour podcast yesterday, and most of the times when me and you talk, you know, we end up talking about, you know, I'm asking you questions about details and foreign policy conflicts and shit, but I did think it would be fun today to just kind of like talk about all this stuff. And yeah, you know, I just kind of found myself thinking about a lot of this stuff, about particularly you and me over, you know, with last night you doing this 10-hour podcast. We're recording this one early, so it'll be in a few days. But as we're recording it last night, Scott did this 10-hour podcast and I did this debate with this New York Times guy. And I don't know, it's just interesting. It's a real interesting moment on so many different, you know, fronts.
It's something to celebrate, man. You know, I mean, obviously we're not in charge of the policy or anything, but you know, I was told there's somebody in the vice president's office is a fan of mine and reads my books. And I just thought, wow, you know, that was not the case in the Joe Biden or Barack Obama or George W. Bush years. That's for sure.
Right.
Sean Hanna and Scooter Libby and David Wormser and now whoever's Scooter up there.
Libby, you know, Scooter Libby never went like, did you hear Horton's take?
Yeah, no, they weren't doing that then. So It ain't everything, but it's a little bit, man. It's a little bit. And, you know, I told Tucker Carlson, I was like, you know, the most important thing about you really is that you're the moral voice of the right. Like there is no Billy Graham now. Like the leader of the right is not Trump either. It's Tucker Carlson. And the most valuable thing about his approach to all of this is the way he just says, this is disgusting. This is sickening. What are we doing? This is wrong. I know it's wrong. I was praying about it and God told me, no, wait, that's not a quote, but just whatever. Yeah. He is afraid to do sin and he's trying to make up for his past transgressions. And he's just so sincere about it. There's, you know what I mean? There's no gimmick.
Yeah.
He's,
no, for sure.
He's legitimately, you know, working hard to try to make amends for past mistakes and all that. And that just makes him such a great leader. You think of how many people supported these wars along with him who now can feel good about following him back the other way. That like, you know what, if Tucker says we don't have to believe this crap anymore, maybe we really don't, you know? And and then with the absolutely not, I will not stand for it, putting my foot down because of how disgusting and sinful the horrific, terrible things are. Like the way that he takes that moral approach to the moral condemnation of it all just makes it, you know, complete. You know, it just drives the point home so strongly that
no question.
There's no going back for that. It's not really a debate about policy. It's a debate about whether we should be indulging in evil or not. And the answer is no, you know, very simple.
Yeah. No, that's right. That's right. And I will say, as much as, you know, look, I've been incredibly hard on him over the last couple months, and I have a feeling that is not going to stop anytime soon. But there really is something about the effect of Donald Trump that he did in a way open this conversation that even he's not able to close now. You know, I know Ron Paul played a huge role in this stuff too. I would never downplay that, but we also, being honest here, I mean, what Donald Trump did, it was just, you know, I remember when, I don't know if you remember this exact moment, but this actually came up recently because now the Iran hawks started using this example again, but Ron Paul used to make the point in the presidential debates, or at least he did this once in one of the Republican primary debates, where he said to the Republican audience, and it was a very smart, you know, strategic way to present this by Dr. Paul, where he goes, you know, in the 80s, Ronald Reagan sent the Marines into Lebanon, and then he turned tail and ran. And we came back home, and he wrote in his memoirs that like he just underestimated the irrationality of Middle Eastern politics, and that's why he came home. And there was something so powerful for your boomer Republican audience to go, oh, Ronald Reagan said that? Oh, all right. You know, like as soon as you just go, oh, all right. all right, Ronald Reagan said that. No, that's only one thing that Ronald Reagan said in a sea of a lot of other things that Ronald Reagan said. But like, you still just, in a way, you give them permission. Like, I'm allowed to talk about, I'm allowed to feel that way. And I'm okay. If Ronald Reagan, and there is something about Donald Trump, like Donald Trump just said all of these wars are stupid too many times, that like, it's not an out of bounds thing anymore to approach any right winger with. Like, I mean, across America, I'm not talking about like, neo-reactionary Curtis Yarvinites or something. I'm saying like your Fox News watching uncle, you could approach them and be like, all these wars were stupid, right? What are we spending money over there? And everything's so expensive over here. And, and they're open to that. And it's just, obviously Tucker, there's just nobody who's played like a bigger role in that than him. And it's really, it's amazing.
Yeah. And it's truly building consensus. And look, we always were right. It was just a matter of people didn't want to get Michael Moore's commie cooties on them.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't want anybody calling him a hippie. And, Ron Paul, he handed out hall passes to, I don't know, a couple of 10 million people at least. But maybe he's just too gentle of a family doctor of a man you needed. Like only Nixon can go to China. Only Ronald Reagan can go to Moscow. You need Donald Trump to say we're coming home from the Middle East. Not that he's doing that, but I'm just saying he's
yes.
And he certainly, in his campaigns and his statements, like you're saying, has absolutely normalized those opinions that like, this is an idiot thing to do. Tough is tough, but stupid is stupid. And we shouldn't be doing these kinds of things anymore. And so, like you're saying, pretty hard to walk that back. Just like I say about Afghanistan, it was like, I think Donald Trump really knows a lot about Afghanistan. It's just he took one look at it and said, this is a stupid waste of money. You can't pacify these people. I want to come home now. Well, so he doesn't have a deep knowledge, but he's still right. And now that he's that correct about it, how could you ever make him wrong again? You're going to convince him now that, no, we can pacify these people, Mr. President. They just need to get hit a little harder. Like, no, dude, he's already decided correctly that ain't going to work with anything short of H-bombs, so forget it. And so same with anything, but the thing is it's got to get reinforced from out here in the country. And it's worth making a call to action here, even, Dave. I think that like people should be calling their congressmen and they should be calling the White House and even their state senators and whatever, and letting people know the way that the consensus is going now. If there's like whatever, some old black and white movie where Cary Grant says, call your congressman, kid, and democracy will work for you or whatever. Well, forget that. Like, I'm not saying that it all works great.
Yeah.
And it's something to believe in or have faith in or whatever. But I am saying that it's worth a shot. And it's important that their phones ring and that they know. And I'll give you a great example. That was just a couple of weeks ago. I saw a congresswoman say, the phone is ringing off the hook and the only topic is Epstein. People are pissed about this. They want to know about this. They want to know why we don't want to know about this. And like, geez, I'm not sure I can go about my other business until we figure out what we're doing about this. So either the phone keeps ringing or it stops. And the phone, when it rings, it's either half the time I want to stop supporting Israel, and also because I'm suspicious that they're behind this Epstein thing anyway, but also I want all the truth about Epstein, or the phone ain't ringing at all, right? Or it's all Epstein, or it's all Gaza, or it's neither, or it's something else. I knew a guy that worked at the state legislature in Texas. He said, the only lobbyists who come up here who want anything are either businessmen who want a free handout or some public interest group that wants to restrict somebody else's freedom. It's the only people up there. It's the only people who participate at all, who care at all, until like occasionally you have a big thing that gets the phones ringing. And so this is the kind of thing where when there's a war on, they have to know, like the water cooler talk in the office is, man, people are pissed about this. Or people are really happy that we stopped doing that terrible thing that we were doing, that we stopped, or whatever. They need positive reinforcement when they're doing the right thing, and they need to be scolded when they're misbehaving. They have to know, like pictures just Donald Trump in that Oval Office, just kind of staring out the window, imagining America out there. Like when he imagines us, are we pissed or are we happy? Right? If he's worried, oh man, they're all pissed off at me. Well, at least that's something, right? If he doesn't even have cause to worry about that, then we're not even in his conversation today. right? Well, the Israelis are pissed. That's who I have to keep happy, rather than the Texans or the New Jerseyans.
Yeah, no, that's right. And it should be pointed out that, like, as much as there are many pro and anti-democracy arguments, and I am very sympathetic to a lot of critiques of democracy, but we do have a democratic process in this country, and it is worth pointing out that the bad guys are really afraid of that. They're very concerned about democracy, actually. Even though they
propaganda for that reason, right?
Yes,
I mean, talking about, yeah.
Well, look, I mean, you could just look at the last few years. I mean, what do you want to do? The Democrats first? The Democrats haven't had an honest primary at least since 2008. I mean, I don't think there's been a real primary since then. The 2016 was rigged. 2020 was rigged. 2024, they didn't even pretend to have one. They just straight up just killed the whole process. They blatantly interfered in the election in 2016. They blatantly interfered in the election in 2020. I guess there's some open questions about what type of interference there was in 2024, or what different timeline we could have been living in with a slight, centimeter difference of a turn by Donald Trump. But just saying, like, it is worth noting that, like, yeah, the ruling elite are very concerned with propagandizing you and very worried about you having an honest chance. And so we don't have that much leverage at our disposal, but it is leverage. They do need to get reelected, and they do worry about that. And so if they think, oh my God, the voters are going to hate my guts if they do this, it's at least a disincentive of. So again, like, to your point, the question isn't, is this going to change the world? The question is, like, is this better than not doing it? And yeah, it's a lot better than not doing it to, take the 10 minutes to just make a phone call. Anyway, Scott, I do gotta wrap up on that, but I really did enjoy this. Next time we're on, it'll be more back to more me asking you details about foreign policy conflicts and all that stuff. But yeah, to remind people, anything particular else that you want to plug or tell people where they can come check out your stuff?
No, just my Substack is scotthortonshow.com. You can get the first three sections of the first two chapters of the audiobook of Provoked. And it's already like 12 hours worth for just like the first third of the book. So that's pretty good to get you started there. I got to finish the Academy before I finish the audiobook, but that's my Substack. And then otherwise, check out the Libertarian Institute. I got a bunch of really great guys over there, great podcasts, great articles, and we're about to publish Creative Chaos, which will be the most important book on the origins of the Syrian dirty war 15 years ago, which you're going to absolutely love, by William Van Wagenen. And that's coming out any day now, probably tomorrow. So really excited.
I can't wait to read that. Yeah.
libertarianinstitute.org.
All right. Awesome. Well, Scott, as always, thank you so much. Like I said before, I really don't know, not just me, man. And like, obviously, look, you've had a tremendous influence over me. I'm a total, Hortonian when it comes to war and peace and most other things, to be honest, too. But yeah, dude, it's just cool. It's cool to watch you getting your flowers the way you are here. And I really can't wait for this Lex Friedman episode to come out. I think it's going to blow a lot of people's minds and going to be really, really great. So anyway, thanks so much for coming on. I just want to, by the way, I'm to the audience, I'm on vacation this week with my family. That's important in life. And we pre-recorded this episode. I'll get another episode or two out this week, but the schedule, bear with me, it might not be our regular schedule. The following week, we'll be back to regular schedule. So anyway, thank you guys very much.
See you Saturday in Houston, buddy.
Oh yeah. See you Saturday, August 9th, Ron Paul's birthday. See you there. All right. Have a good night, guys. Peace.